In this day and age of amazing sports technology, we can't do something to determine where a football should be spotted. It's impossible for the officials to spot a football when 22 huge football players dive into a pile and somebody's wrestling around. Other guys are wrestling around trying to push him back. He's trying to push forward. You don't know when the knee's down. You don't know when the forward progress was stopped. You don't know exactly when the football was frozen in time at that spot when the knee touched down. It's impossible. Many times the knee doesn't go down forever because the guy's laying on four other guys. That was the situation with Georgia and South Carolina. Mark Rogers TV here to talk about it. And let's start with that play because, again, Steve Spurrier had a decision. If you're unaware of what happened in this game, maybe just caught the score, South Carolina pulls off the upset at home over Georgia 38-35. Spurrier had the decision with about I think there was about $1:45 to play, maybe not quite that much time, about $1:25 to play at midfield, leading 38-35. He's got the football. He can ice the game with a first down. It's 4th and inches, or he can punt it away, give it to Hudson Mason, and make him have to drive it about 70 yards to kick a field goal, or maybe not kick a field goal, as was the case earlier in the quarter. Okay, well, he decided to go for it. I'm not going to argue with the move because you can go both ways on that. You ice the game or you make them drive it 70 or 75 yards. I can see going either way on that. But anyway, regardless, even if he doesn't get it, field goal kickers missed 2 consecutive for Georgia. They still have to drive it 20 yards just to get it in the 48-yard range. So anyway, they go for it. It's a ridiculous pile of guys, like it typically is, fighting for position because the game's on the line, and the refs have an impossible task and assignment in coming in from each sideline to spot the football. And they determined that it was just about that close to the stick. Now, I learned tonight that the stick, I thought that the football had to touch the stick, had to come even with the stick to mark a first down, but it actually just has to overlap the first chain link of the stick, and that's exactly what happened. And as Georgia head coach Mark Richt said after the game, if we would have had a credit card, we could have sliced it right in there. It was that close. Or was it that close? Well, who knows how close it was. We know that it was really close. Was it correctly spotted? Those guys have an impossible job. That was a great football game between Georgia and South Carolina. It also highlights that we cannot overreact to week 1. I saw it all over the place after South Carolina got torched by Kenny Hill, that they were horrible, that they were done, and that Georgia looked like a national championship team in week 1. And you know what? They still may be a national championship team. I'm not predicting that, but I'm saying, again, we can't overreact to this. Georgia went on the road, took on a very good South Carolina team, lost by maybe that much. Again, Georgia looked exceptional against Clemson, especially on defense in the second half, pulled away from the Tigers, and we'll see how good down the road Clemson is to be able to put that victory into context. But again, the people that I've talked to and heard from all week gave Georgia all the credit in the world as the world beater, and gave no credit to South Carolina and thought that they were going to get drubbed. But we know better in the SEC. We know better in college football in general, and they were 2 completely different teams in this one. It came down to a couple missed plays by Georgia, a couple judgment errors. First of all, what happened was Dylan Thompson, who had an exceptional game. He really used the tight end, especially Rory Anderson, in the offense. He completed, 21 of 30 for 271, 3 touchdown passes, and the 1 interception we will talk about. So South Carolina raced out to a lead. They held a 1-2 score lead the entire game. At this point, South Carolina had led it 38-28. Georgia scored. It was 38-35. South Carolina the ball deep in its own end with about 10 minutes to play. Dylan Thompson throws an ill-advised pass late down the middle. Damian Swann makes a great play on the ball, picks it off, brings it down to the 5-yard line. The same Damian Swann who had a really awful time last season in coverage for Georgia after having an exceptional sophomore season. He was lost last year and we'll see how he plays as a senior. But this was a huge play for Georgia, and it looked like it was going to be the turning point in a possible and probable win at home. Again, 38-35, Swan picks it off, takes it down to the 5. First play from right around the 5-yard line, Hudson Mason makes a critical error. He makes the good decision in throwing the ball away because nothing was there. He dropped back to pass. They had a middle screen set up, and he just dumped the ball in the ground. But it was intentional grounding. That completely ruined the drive, brought them back. They couldn't do anything, and then they bring on Marshall Morgan. Marshall Morgan, who had hit at one point 23 of 24 consecutive field goals. So Marshall Morgan, let's see, as a junior, yes, hit 22 of 23. He was 1 for 1 this season coming into this game. He had hit 23 of 24 field goals after a shaky first campaign with Georgia at 8 of 14. The kid was automatic until tonight, missing 2 field goals and missing a chip shot in this particular situation. And so South Carolina still held a 38-35 lead. They get the ball back, move it out to midfield, and that set up the scenario with the sticks at the 50-yard line. So what do we take away from this one? Well, we take away that Georgia is a really good football team. And we take away that South Carolina is a really good football team, and that the SEC is the best conference in America. Because these two teams, who knows, they might be the 2 best teams in the conference. Am I saying that? No, I'm saying that we need to watch the entire season and not jump to conclusions as people on social media do all day on Saturday. And we will continue to speculate on through based on what happened today, and we will blow that out of proportion. So for right now, South Carolina got torched on defense. We talked the entire offseason about South Carolina's issues in the secondary, specifically with Connor Tapp of SB Nation's Garnet and Black Attack. He set us up and really ran down the personnel in the secondary, and what was lost with Hampton and Legree moving on, one of them to the NFL, both of them off campus, one scholarship cornerback back, a lot of incoming talent, but very inexperienced talent and a lot of question marks. They got, of course, torched by Kenny Hill for the tune of 511 yards in the opener, gave up a 76% third down conversion rate in that game, but they got better against East Carolina. Shane Carden still made his plays, but they won the game by 10, only gave up 50% third down conversion. Then against Georgia in this game, 38% third down conversion rate in winning, again, 38-35. So not a stellar defensive performance by South Carolina, but they're getting better. When I looked at the stats on Todd Gurley, who's the best running back in the country, he gained 161 yards on 20 carries, just 20 carries, 131 yards on 20 carries. So that's 6.6 per pop. That's real healthy against the top-notch defense, against a good defense. Capable defense in the SEC. It just didn't seem like he got that many yards. He ripped off a 40-yarder. I thought South Carolina's front seven did an exceptional job on Todd Gurley. Nick Chubb ran one, got away for about 25 yards. He had 4 carries for 34, and he's just a beast to get a hold of and bring to the ground, and his better days are ahead of him as well. For South Carolina to balance out the passing of Dylan Thompson, you had Brandon Wilds, 14 carries, 93 yards. Also, Mike Davis, 17 for 66. The Georgia defense, once again, the front seven, if you look at the playmakers that they have on that front seven, they should be dominant. We've talked about it the entire offseason. The transition from Todd Grantham to Jeremy Pruitt, would this make it a different Georgia defense? It's been good. Should it be elite? Well, if you look at the recruiting rankings and look at the scouting reports on these guys coming into the system, you would think that Georgia could build an elite defense. They have yet to do so, and they did not have anything close to an elite defense against South Carolina on this night. Credit South Carolina's offensive line as well. They ran behind Thompson, and they ran behind Can on the left side, and they did it very effectively. The South Carolina offensive line was expected to be one of the best in the conference, if not the nation this season. They didn't look it against Texas A&M, but they sure did against East Carolina. And again, against this kind of talent from Georgia, the Dogs give up 447 in yardage to South Carolina. This is not a great defense. They have the people in place. Jeremy Pruitt's been given a lot of money and a lot of responsibility and attention to get the job done. The job was not accomplished on this one, as again, South Carolina wins it at home 38-35. Hudson Mason did his job. Didn't really see him make any crucial mistakes in this one besides the grounding play, and he was just looking to get rid of the football because he knew that the play was blown up and should have thrown it out of the back of the end zone, and thought that possibly somebody would be considered in the area, and that really obviously set up the Morgan miss, and that was pretty much the end of the game, besides the on the sticks right there. So Hudson Mason, 16 of 22 for a $191, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. For Georgia, they've got a bit of a week off, taking on Troy. Then they take on Tennessee, who was beaten up pretty badly by Oklahoma. South Carolina goes to Vandy. The Commodores, having all sorts of issues, had to avoid embarrassment again against UMass. And then South Carolina in 2 weeks takes on Missouri. Maybe we didn't give the Tigers enough credit in losing all that talent to the NFL after going 12-2, winning the Cotton Bowl and winning the SEC Eastern Division. But the Tigers might have some fight in them this season with Matty Mock at quarterback and his 12 touchdown passes. All right, let's talk about the SEC Eastern Division, South Carolina and Georgia. This swings it South Carolina's way when Georgia looked to be the dominant team in the division. This swings it again. Yes, South Carolina's way with the victory between the big three. We'll call them South Carolina, Georgia, and we'll give it to Florida, coming off the tough win, very close win against Kentucky at home. We'll give Florida a possibility of being a factor in this race. Will you? We would love to hear you comment on the SEC Eastern Division, Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, and anybody else you would like to talk about right here on Mark Rogers TV.